Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. It is a Thursday edition of the show. We want to say hello to all the Pewter people that are just filing into the chat as we get this episode underway. We're going to continue to talk about the Bucs schedule. That's right. The NFL schedule dropped last night, including your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We did a live show yesterday giving initial thoughts and reactions to everything. And today we will be discussing the Bucs' biggest games in 2024. There's a couple of primetime games, other highlight matchups, so we're going to break it all down. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague from PewterReport.com, Adam Slavon. Adam, great to be talking to you.
Yeah.
How you doing on this fine Thursday afternoon?
Matt, I'm doing great. And just want to say what's up to the Pewter people. I feel like it's been a while being on here. So I'm excited to be on and to talk about the schedule. Yesterday, the NFL announced the full slate of 272 games. And for the Bucs, there's 17 games, and it's really exciting. So I'm looking forward to diving into it with you at all the big matchups, because there's plenty.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we kind of go, we don't have to go game by game or whatever, but just your initial reactions. I tweeted mine out yesterday while on the show, so a little bit of multitasking there. But just your initial immediate reaction to, like, what popped into your head first when you said, oh, all right, the schedule's out. Bam, first thoughts.
Yeah, my first thoughts were it's very similar actually to the beginning of last year when you look at the Lions facing them early in the season again, as well as at the Eagles. I think those two games are going to be really important. And the Bucs are facing the teams that they faced in the playoffs early in the season. So when you look at Detroit, they're going to be hungry to go in there, and Eminem will have his album dropped by then, but it could be the death of Slim Shady when you look at it. And then the Eagles, like, will they still have their number? Like, they dominated them 32-9 in the playoffs, but can they do that again? Can they keep that momentum? I think if they win those two games, they're in a really good spot, and it's going to be important for their confidence.
Yeah, there's no question that early on in the season, the Bucs can set themselves up really well. Because I've been on the record, their bye week is week 11. Yeah. So that obviously means they have 10 games before that. I felt that 5-5 is really the floor for the Bucs. Like, that's what should be a worst case scenario for them heading into the bye week. But how do you set yourselves up? Because we'll talk about that gauntlet in just a moment. You got to start out hot. And I know Detroit has been the boogeyman for the Buccaneers, losing 2 last season, including that creamsicle game in Tampa coming right out of the bye. But revenge can be a good thing. You know, the Bucs kind of had a revenge tour a couple of seasons ago, getting back at teams. They clearly had a revenge tour when they won the Super Bowl in 2020, defeating the Saints after losing to them twice in the regular season and defeating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl for the ultimate prize in a game where in the regular season, the Chiefs just had their way with them in that first game. And obviously that's years removed. There's only so many players that are, you know, still from that Super Bowl winning team now with the Buccaneers. But I think it's important to get off to that good start because, you know, you look at it, Washington should be a win for the Buccaneers. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be, but you start out 1-0. A win against Detroit, especially with playing Denver in week 3. I mean, you want to talk about momentum at the beginning of the season. They need to build that momentum before they get to week 5, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And when I look at like the biggest games, I want to put Washington as number 1 because you look at it, that's the tone setter game. That's the game when you really get to see what the team is made of. And going up against Jaden Daniels, like, he's going to be a challenge. Like facing Lamar Jackson later in the season, going up against that dual threat quarterback. And then you look at all the rookies. Scott Reynolds wrote about it yesterday that the team was high on, seeing all of them in person, like going up against them. Will the Bucs be able to kick things off at home on the right foot? I think will be huge for how the rest of the season goes.
Yeah, crazy that they obviously start against Jaden Daniels, but then 2 weeks later in Denver, or against Denver, it's in Tampa, but Denver comes to Tampa. You're playing against probably Bo Nix. Probably. Who knows? I mean, maybe Zach Wilson will shock the world.
Zach Wilson.
But yeah, you're talking about 2 rookie quarterbacks in 3 weeks. I mean, that's pretty good. So that's what makes that Lions game so much more important because I know the Bucs have had their trouble with rookie quarterbacks. Famously, they lost to Daniel Jones in 2019 in a horrible second half by the Bucs. They jumped out to a huge lead and then blew it later on. And then the infamous Brock Purdy game 2 seasons ago, in his first career start, defeating Tom Brady and the Bucs in an absolute blowout of a game. Mm-hmm. But if we're chalking those up as wins against Washington and Denver, Detroit week 2, Philly week 4, we're looking at a situation where if the Bucs were to start out 4-0, though there are 2 quality wins in that 4-0 start. And of course, it's best case scenario. But I also don't know what to think of the Eagles this season. Right. Because on one hand, they lost Jason Kelce, who was a strength for them. They're coming off a year where they were fantastic in the beginning and then couldn't get out of their own way in the latter half, and that's why the Bucs dismantled them in their playoff matchup. They did get Saquon Barkley, and that's huge for them, depending on how much you care about the running game.
And their secondary, too. Like, they really added some young players. Cooper DeJean in there. Yeah, Kevin White.
That's a big risk, Like, you're just going to rely on all these young players. Like, there's going to be growing pains, especially a month into the season in week 4. What do you make of Philly?
Man, like you said, they started off so hot last year, but it's kind of like the Bucs caught them at the time when they couldn't really beat anybody. And the Bucs completely dismantled them. But when you look at earlier in the season, when it was 25-11, I mean, the Eagles really controlled the line of scrimmage. You mentioned Jason Kelce being retired, but their offensive line is still a strength. And as well as that, their defensive line. I mean, they have so much depth in the trenches. It's still going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah. So, we got a super chat. Let's get to that super chat first. Thanks to Bucs Basement. Appreciate for the $2 super chat. And we got a lot of great people in the comments. If you want to make sure your comment gets heard or you have a question that you want us to answer, you super chat us, you get to cut the line. You know the rules. So thank you to Bucs Basement for this $2 super chat, who says Bowles time management will cost the team 3 games. Yeah, I think that's a story. Yeah, that's a timeout on. Unfortunately, that's going to be a storyline that's going to stay with Todd Bowles. I mean, it literally ended the season.
Yeah.
Not like that the Bucs lost because of that final timeout, but I mean, that was one of the biggest talking points when the game was over. And even a couple of days later was Todd Bowles not calling that timeout late. He famously never called timeouts in the first half and then would call them at very odd times in the second half. So, this is a year, Adam, we can look big picture with this. Todd Bowles, in his head coaching career with the Buccaneers, he's made the playoffs 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's a check in the box. But then you look and they went 8-9 with Tom Brady. And then they went 9-8 in a crazy, crazy year where they lost 6 of 7 games, but yet still won the division. I'm not saying Todd Bowles is going into the season on the hot seat. I think that would be kind of silly, especially since they won the division 2 years in a row. But we just talked about the Bucs starting out 4-0. Say they start out like 1-3, and then you have the gauntlet, which we'll talk about next with Atlanta, New Orleans. Really starts in week 7 with Ravens and Atlanta again, Kansas City and San Francisco.
Yeah.
With the not just blunders, but like the glaring mistakes that have fallen on Todd Bowles, whether it's the timeout issues, whether it's, that game against the Texans last year, which really was a defensive debacle, which, ultimately falls on Todd Bowles. I don't think Todd Bowles has a lot of cushion or margin for error this year. I think he gets a little bit of flexibility, but not a ton.
Yeah, I agree. And when you look at like Todd Bowles, you'd like to think that he's kind of learned from his mistakes over the past couple of years, and especially looking at last year and just kind of being conservative heading into halftime and then not calling timeouts at crucial moments. But bigger picture, I think that he's not in the hot seat, but he is under more pressure. And especially with the Bucs being 8-9, 9-8, kind of on that upward trajectory. he's going to be under more pressure to really perform and get the team like through its highs and lows. Like the team can't afford to lose 6 out of 7 games this year like it did last year, especially when you look at weeks 4 through 10 when they're going to be facing like really high quality opponents. You can make an argument each team is going to be fighting for a playoff spot.
Yeah.
And with that, I mean, Todd Bowles has to be on his A game during that stretch and throughout the season, because if he's not, I mean, if they are 1-3 and then they go into that gauntlet, he might not last the rest of the season. Like in that case.
Yeah, let's talk about that gauntlet. So we talked about the first 4 games: Washington, at Detroit, against Denver, and against Philly. So 3 out of their first 4 games of the year are at home, which the Bucs have to, they have to bank on it. They have to make sure that they have a winning record out of those first 4. Then you get your first matchup against Atlanta. This is like an appetizer to the gauntlet, if you will, because it is the biggest opponent that the Bucs have this year. Obviously, it's in the division, but short week, Kirk Cousins with the Falcons at Atlanta. Then New Orleans, which is always a dogfight. It's always it's never pretty when it's Bucs Saints. Last year in New Orleans, it was actually quite delightful, but typically it's not pretty. Then the gauntlet really gets going. You got a Monday Night Football game at home, the only primetime home game for the Bucs this year, against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. Then it's another matchup against the Falcons, again, at home. So you do have that benefit of 2 straight home games in this gauntlet. Yeah. Then you head out to Kansas City for Monday Night Football. They have not played at Arrowhead since 2016. It's been quite a while since the Bucs went over to Kansas City. Only 2 players on this current roster were on that team or were even in the organization. Like Todd Bowles wasn't, none of the coaching staff. It was just Levante David and Mike Evans were the only guys on the roster when the Bucs. Maybe Will Golston as well. Yeah, Will Golston too. But yeah, only 3 guys. And then home again. So against the 49ers, who, as we've seen, they're
not on the road against the 49ers this time.
Yeah. So the benefit of the gauntlet is that 3 out of the 4 are at home. But also, that's still a really, really rough stretch for the Bucs. Your reaction to this, what has been dubbed by the gauntlet, not just by us, but many people have been calling it a gauntlet.
Yeah, definitely. And when you look at, I first look at the Falcons matchup in week 5, coming off a short week and facing the Eagles, and then you go right to national, primetime with so many eyes on you. If the Bucs can beat the Falcons, can they assert that NFC South dominance? Will people finally take them seriously going up against Kirk Cousins and the Falcons offense? I think that's going to be one of the biggest games on the schedule, timing wise, week 5. Can they ride into that stretch on a hot streak? And then when you look at the Chiefs and the 49ers, man, that's going to be tough.
Back to back.
Back to back.
Playing the teams that played in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And weeks 9 and 10 of the season, the mid-season juncture right before the bye week, these guys are going to be tired. And then they have to face their toughest opponents. I think that's going to be a really big challenge up against Patrick Mahomes and then Brock Purdy and the 49ers defense. Those are going to be huge tests. And then when you look at it, even Baltimore and Lamar Jackson, you can't push that aside either.
Yeah.
You very well could see a situation where the Bucs, they lose a few of those games, and then they have to really turn things up in the second half.
Let's stick with Atlanta for one more moment. How do you feel about the fact that the Bucs and the Falcons are playing each other so early in the season, and they literally played twice in the month of October, so not that far apart? Because I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. I'll share my opinion after, but what are your thoughts about the timing of their games against the Falcons?
Well, I think it's a great Matt Matera would say, where's the drama?
That's good. I like it.
But the fact that the Falcons and the Bucs aren't playing in December, the NFL, they usually do really good at storylines and suspense in the schedule, but that should be a week 17 game, like it has been in the past couple of years, late in the season, division on the line. I mean, both of these teams I feel like are going to be neck and neck. So seeing them 2 times early in the season, it's kind of an injustice. But overall, I think that it's also going to be good that they get it out of the way too.
Yeah. So from the football fan perspective, it's completely egregious that the two favorites, no matter what way you look at it, whether you think it's the Bucs, whether you think it's the Falcons, yeah, some Saints fans will try to make a case for the Saints. But I would say 90% of the country, 90% of football fans, because obviously the NFL has a great international fan base as well, that we can't forget. 90% of football fans would say that the two favorites in the NFC South are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. To have both of their matchups in the second month of the season, when these teams could be fighting neck and neck the whole way, it is ridiculous. It is blasphemous. It is outlandish that there is not a game. I'd even settle for late November, right around Thanksgiving, if that was their last game. But it is ridiculous that there is not a game of very, very high magnitude in December in the double-digit part of the schedule when we get to weeks, 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever it is. To get it done so early, I just think it's, again, the drama. Like you said, quoting myself, it's all about the drama. It's about the entertainment. I want Bucs fans waking up early December, not just happy because it's Christmas and Hanukkah time or whatever holiday you celebrate. I want Bucs fans waking up, pumped up that they have a huge matchup against the Falcons. Yeah, you're going to be like a little bit of nervous because that's just that's what being a fan is all about. And it's ridiculous. It's silly that we don't get Bucs Falcons in either November or December, which would be ideal. Now, from the analyst, reporter, whatever else you want to call it, perspective of it, I actually think this helps out the Bucs way more than it does the Atlanta Falcons. Now, either way, if you get a sweep, I mean, that gives you a huge leg up in this race for the NFC South, and the other team's going to be playing catch up the whole time. Now, if they split, then it's kind of a moot point. But, I mean, we saw it when Tom Brady came to Tampa. We saw it not as much when Baker Mayfield started because the Bucs began 3-1 going into the bye. But then after the bye, when there was more tape on the Bucs, when defenses could scout and kind of look at patterns and certain things that they had going on, that's when the Bucs went into their tailspin. That's when they started losing 6 of 7, and Todd Bowles' job was very much in jeopardy until they got through the mud, and we all saw how they did in December and getting to the postseason. If you're the Bucs, I think you're better off playing Atlanta early in the season. They have a tough schedule leading up to that game against the Bucs. You have Kirk Cousins, who, let's remember, is coming off of an Achilles injury. The Achilles injury beside itself, which, by the way, now that I think of it, it's kind of crazy. You have like Rodgers, Cousins, both are coming off Achilles injuries. Well, they both, and we're both just assuming they're going to play well. Anyway,
two oldest quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't think. I think Atlanta's going to be good. Don't get me wrong. This isn't me completely bashing Atlanta. I know this is a Bucs podcast, but to think that Atlanta's going to be great right out of the gate, I think, is a little pretentious. It's a tad silly to say, especially with the difficulty early on of the schedule for Atlanta. Then you play the Bucs on a short week. Now, that might help Atlanta a little bit. I've always felt, and I'd say these teams are fairly even, but I've always felt for a lot of Thursday night games, and actually the Thursday night schedule this year is pretty good. In years past, we'd get terrible matchups.
Man. Like Broncos-Panthers last year.
Yeah, just awful. It's actually pretty good this year. I'm sure Al Michaels went storming into the offices being like, we better get good games this year.
I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But I've always felt when it was like a great team against like a pretty crappy team, typically the great team still prevails, but the worst team, I think, because there was a less amount of time to prepare and guys are recovering from injuries from Sunday's game, it kind of like even the playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just think if you want to jump on the Falcons early, I think it's great for the Bucs that they play them in the month of October, especially since Baker Mayfield's in year 2. You brought everyone back. We've done the song and dance over and over again. So as a fan, I hate it. As an analyst, if I were going to spin it for the Bucs, I'd say it's great because you're the more seasoned team in October than the Falcons will be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a great point when you look at like the Thursday night matchup and kind of the teams both being even on a shorter week with less preparation time. But just kind of wanted to dive into your point when you mentioned like assuming the Falcons are going to be good and already like placing them higher in the power rankings because they got a shiny new toy in Kirk Cousins. Like the difference from Desmond Ritter to Kirk Cousins, there's no doubt that that's an upgrade. But just assuming that they're going to win the division, win 10, 11 games when Kirk is coming off a major injury, you have a whole new coaching staff to really acclimate the players to it. Like assuming that they're going to hit the ground running, like that's a tough task.
Oh, without question. Because we've seen the Bucs go through it, and now the Falcons have to go through it too. The gauntlet of Kansas City, the gauntlet of the Ravens as well in the mix. I find that matchup quite fascinating because obviously everyone's going to turn to Lamar Jackson. He's electrifying, which he absolutely is. I think this is a great test earlier in the season for what hopefully is a revamped Bucs pass rush. I mean, if we know Yaya Diaby is going to be on one side, whoever lines up on the other side at outside linebacker, I think that's a good test. But I'm kind of just as much as intrigued of the Bucs offense against the Ravens defense because the Ravens year in and year out are a pretty good team. And that's credit to John Harbaugh and the front office and everything like that. But they also have a very stingy defense. And they have a great secondary. I think they have one of the best secondaries in the league. So this might be a game where the Bucs may have to focus on running the football a little bit more. And as we know, the run game has not been good for the Bucs over the last 2 years, but there is a legitimate effort to turn around this run game. Obviously, that goes with the Graham Barton draft pick, with Elijah Klein as well on the offensive line, Bucky Irving as a running back, going with Rachaad White. I think this might be the game, and sure, against Philly as well, the New Orleans, but the Ravens on Monday Night Football, where if they can run it against Baltimore, I think they'll be able to hold their own against really any other defense in this league.
Yeah, and like by week 7, you'd hope that the Bucs running game could really be and like have some momentum and have things working in their favor because you would assume by that time that Graham Barton and whoever's at left guard, whether that's Klein, Opeta, Bredesen, like they're building chemistry. Those 5 guys are the best 5 guys out there. And then you have a running game with Rachaad White. Like, is he going to take that next step in year 3? And then Bucky Irving, the dynamic rookie, could he be the little sidekick to Rachaad White? I think that's going to be really key is the run game, not just in that game, but looking at weeks ahead and kind of preserving Baker Mayfield, but also putting him in situations to succeed. And then like I think Chris Godwin in the slot is going to be huge too. And just that other outside receiver, whether that's McMillan or Trey Palmer. One thing that the Bucs will need more this season is big plays. And big plays in big games usually equals to big wins. So they'll need a few of those to really get the ball rolling.
It does. You mentioned dynamic a moment ago. There's nothing more dynamic than Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of the Pewter Report podcast. Check out all the great flavors that they have, including the vibes, whether it's Galaxy, Astro, or Cosmic. The Arctic Vibe is my personal favorite. There's so many great flavors of Celsius. So if you want to know where to find one, go to the Celsius store locator on their website, punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest location where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, health and fitness store, 7-Eleven, or, Adam, it might just be your
bodega.
That was nice. Good job. And once you keep going to your bodega and you know you love Celsius and you want more, you can buy it in bulk. Head on over to Amazon, click on the subscribe and save. I recommend getting that variety pack because you heard me rattle off a lot of great flavors. Variety is the spice of life, so try as many Celsius as you can. Amazon, variety pack, and have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. Could be a week, a month, quarterly, yearly. Up to you. You're in charge. You are the captain now. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of the Pewter Report podcast. We got another super. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, put a link in the chat.
Yes.
Scott Reynolds just dropped a new Pewter Pulse talking about the big problem with the Bucs schedule. So after our podcast today, be sure to give that a listen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Speaking of the schedule, looking at it as a whole, thanks to Paul Bowen for this $1.99 super chat, who says Bucks going 12-5, take it to the bank. Paul, thank you so much for the super chat. Very bold of you. I will give my immediate prediction at the end of the show. So I guess it's not that immediate, but my first thought of what the record is going to be for the Bucs at the end of this show. But like I said, I think the Bucs need to get to 5-5 at the bye. We mentioned Kansas City and San Francisco. But I think really where the Bucs are going to make their money this year is the schedule after the bye. Because you got Giants, Panthers, Raiders, all right there.
Can we talk about the Giants for a second with those new uniforms, man?
Yes, because I want to talk about the Giants, and I want to talk about some of the schedule release videos as well. So I think this is a good time to do it. The New York Giants 100th year anniversary jerseys are vomit-inducing. They are one of the most disgusting jerseys I have ever seen in my life. And I am shocked that the NFL, the biggest sports conglomerate in the history of all sports, gave an A-OK with these jerseys. And we've seen some bad jerseys or some jerseys that stick out because they look kind of odd. The Packers had them for a little bit. The Steelers infamously had the Bumblebee ones. The Eagles had some, not the Kelly Green ones, but the Eagles have had some disgusting looking jerseys. The New York Jets had the New York Titans jerseys, which I kind of like, but some people didn't. And I understand why they don't. But these Giants jerseys look more like the Montreal Canadiens. Someone on Twitter said that. They look like the Montreal Canadiens.
And somebody pointed out like the London Monarchs of like
the London Monarchs. They might as well not even. First of all, their helmets look like Michigan's helmets, just different colors. Because you got like the red and Michigan's obviously it's yellow in the beginning, but the rest is blue. This one it's like the red that the Giants have, and then the rest of their helmet is a lighter blue with the Giants colors. But Adam, it literally looks like when you play Madden, like right before you go and actually take the field and play the game when you're still in the lobby or whatever you want to call it. And you could do like helmet from modern day, jersey from 1960s, pants from 1980s, socks like third jersey or whatever it is. Because I've done that on Madden. But it's Madden. It's supposed to be fun and stupid and not that serious. This is an NFL team, one of the most illustrious NFL teams in the history of football. And the Giants look absolutely ridiculous with this jersey. It looks like, and they even said in the thing, it's like helmet from the 1950s, pants from the 1953s. That's the best you could have came up with. They could have done a better job just putting a blue jersey, and on the side of their helmets, on one side have Lawrence Taylor, the other side have Eli Manning, and then have Michael Strahan on the chest or something like that, and say, 100 years, these are our greatest players of all time. That would have been a better idea than what the Giants put out today.
There's not even an argument that like it's so bad it's good. Like it's just bad. Like there's no way you could justify it. And for it being 100-year like celebration, they could have kept them in the vault. You know, like they didn't have to release them.
Yeah,
exactly. Horrific.
Like how many levels of clearance did that have to go?
This.
The other thing I want to talk about after that abomination of a jersey, this actually happened the day before, but a great thing with a lot of these schedule releases is teams get super, super creative with how they do it.
Yeah.
I think the two best schedule releases, I would say top three, the Chargers were fantastic.
Chargers crush it.
With the Sims. Yeah, they were great with their kicker last year, trying to get him into the Pro Bowl. I think it was Dicker the kicker.
Yeah, with like the law firm commercials.
Yeah. So the Chargers were fantastic with that. I know they're an NFC South rival, but the Falcons doing NFL Street was great. And then the Titans went back to the well with like being on Broadway in Nashville, getting drunk fans to like name the team.
Yeah.
Those three were fantastic. And I want to mention the Chargers one specifically because the Sims guy with Baker Mayfield, cooking up and there's a fire. The attention to detail, I'm convinced whoever runs the Chargers social media either used to live in Tampa or has someone that lives in Tampa. Because the Easter eggs galore, not just Baker baking and it's on fire, but the Antonio Brown peace picture from when the Bucs played the Jets. The other sign that said, like, get it right, get it tight or whatever, that was from John Gruden yelling at Chris Sims back in the day, which was a pretty famous video. And then on the left side, and this is where I think the whoever runs the Chargers social media has some affiliation with Tampa. Santoro's Pizza on the left side. I'm a huge fan of Santoro's. I think it's the best pizza in Tampa. We can save that discussion for another day, but it's pretty much a local Tampa pizza spot. Like Santoro's isn't all over. So to have Santoro's Pizza on the left side in that kitchen, unbelievable attention to detail.
And in cooking terms, chef's kiss. Like that was like the perfect touch on it.
No question about it. Also, and again, with the attention to detail, and you can say it's about every single team that they had in the thing. There were some funny ones with the Browns. There were some funny ones with the Steelers.
Browns,
the Falcons, Kirk Cousins DJing. You got the Migos with their own private section. Lou Williams eating the pepper wings. And then Michael Penix at 28-3 on the side, where people are waiting online outside with 28-3. Michael Penix coming in, the record stopping, and Kirk Cousins just like losing his mind. So freaking funny.
I love that. It's really like in the past couple of years, like scheduled day is like an all day thing. And like you're seeing it throughout the day, like teams are announcing it. You mentioned the Browns. I thought it was funny. Like they did a thread of all their opponents and like putting a picture next to them, like describing them. Yeah. And then they had the Steelers and it was like a garbage can and just like fans are going crazy. Like it's a good time.
Yeah. The Bucs one was fine. I think it was pretty funny with having them draw the opponents. Rachaad White cannot draw a horse by any means. I'm surprised anyone guessed that it was the Broncos. It did not look like one. Luke Gedeke, not too bad of an artist. He definitely got the point across. So
not just fun. A lifter, an artist.
Yeah, just a lifter. It was fun. It was entertaining. Wasn't the best, but it certainly wasn't like, oh my God, what are they doing here? So shout out to the Bucs team. They're very creative, and they do a great job on social media as well. They really do. So shout out to them. Let's get back to the schedule. So we mentioned the gauntlet. It's a little bit easier the second half of the season. I really think the only two tough games down the stretch, week 15 against the Chargers, week 16, and then obviously week 18 against Dallas, and then week 18 against the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this, Adam. I did an article earlier today. I ranked the 4 primetime games that the Buccaneers had. So obviously it's the Ravens, the Falcons, the Chiefs, and the Cowboys.
Yep.
The way I ranked it, my criteria, if you will, was entertainment value, importance, level of importance, and timing of the schedule. So my ranking was Cowboys number 1, Falcons number 2, Chiefs number 3, and Ravens 4. Last but not least, all very entertaining games.
Yeah.
How would you rank it if you were?
So, read your article. Great article, by the way. The only difference I would have is the Cowboys putting them at 2 and then the Falcons at 1. I think like just a primetime divisional matchup early in the season, I think it's going to be huge, like in terms, like you mentioned, importance, but also entertainment value. I mean, like that's going to be entertaining. That's not going to be like a Thursday night football game last year. Like this game is going to be important for the rest of the season. And like the Cowboys, you can make the argument it's late in the season, playoff hopes on the line. But by then, like there should already be a solid picture of where the Bucs are heading. And don't really like the Cowboys, so we're gonna bump it down a little bit. But otherwise, I think you hit the nail on the head with the Chiefs at 3. I think some of the intrigue with The Super Bowl, even though it's a couple years ago, players have come and gone. Like, it's still going to be Patrick Mahomes. It's still going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense going at it.
Yeah.
And then the Ravens, if that's the 4th ranked primetime game, I think that the schedule is pretty good because the Ravens are going to be a challenge, but that is also going to be an entertaining game. When you look at Lamar Jackson, you look at the Ravens defense, as you mentioned, Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, it's going to be a great game. So that's how I would rank them. I would just swap the Cowboys and Falcons, but yeah.
And like I said before, with the Ravens, it's their only home primetime game. I totally get your point. It's not a wrong answer. And that's what I said in the article, too. There are no wrong answers to this. It's just, the joy of football. And I was very close to putting the Falcons first. It was just more the annoyance I had of the Falcons playing so early that pushed it to for myself, because there's no argument. The magnitude of importance is that game against the Falcons. But the reason why I had Dallas number 1 is because it's so late in the season, in week 16. Yeah, everyone's going to know kind of like where their seeding is. But this is a big game because it's a measuring stick game, because Dallas is usually pretty good. Will this be the Bucs trying to hold on to first place in the NFC South? Is this a game where Dallas is in first place in their division in the NFC East and the Bucs are in first place in their division, the NFC South? This could decide who's either, who knows, in first place in the NFC, or between 2 and 3 in the NFC. I think that's big. Or if they're both going for a wild card spot, or if the Bucs are going for a wild card spot, that's a big time win against an NFC team, which will help their seeding with the wild card. And then on top of that, it's Sunday Night Football, so it's the only primetime game that they have on a Sunday with a regular amount of rest.
Yeah.
If the Bucs beat the Falcons, that's a great thing. Bucs fans will love it. But to beat, imagine they embarrass the Cowboys in Dallas, then all of America is behind the Buccaneers.
Bucs are America's team then.
Yeah, then they become America's team, kind of like when they beat the Cowboys. I know they played in the first game of the season 2 years in a row, but particularly that second time when they were in Dallas and the Bucs kind of just bludgeoned them. It wasn't a high-scoring game, but the Cowboys just could not score. So I kind of think overall the beating the Cowboys and having a big win late in the season, to me, just edges it above an early game against Atlanta in primetime. Now, if it was, say, week 12, coming out of the bye and they play Atlanta in primetime, I probably would have had that first. But for me, it's really just playing so damn early that kind of bothers me.
I respect that. And just adding context to the Cowboys game, not only is that on the road, but it also comes after going to Los Angeles the week before and facing the Chargers. So if they were able to win both of those tough road matchups, that speaks volumes about the team's resiliency too, because that's a lot of traveling too.
Yeah, the Bucs are going to rack up their miles this year between the Chargers, and going out to Dallas, and they're lucky Denver's coming to Tampa, and it's not the other way around. But yeah, the Bucs are on the move to quite a couple of distances this year, and like you said earlier, good that they're not going to San Francisco, which has been a house of horrors compared to the 49ers coming to Tampa. So we talked a little bit about Giants, Carolina. Sure, there's the storyline of Dave Canales against the Panthers, but they play so late in the season. I think it's better for the Bucs that they have more of a top-heavy schedule, and then it kind of smooths out at the end. I think you'd rather have that than kind of the other way around, because even as difficult as that gauntlet is, the Bucs lost 6 of 7 last year and still were able to right the ship. Say they went winless in that gauntlet, that's still just 4 losses, and then you have the bye to kind of regroup and get it together. But man, I mean, after that Dallas game, Carolina, that's if they beat Dallas, that's going to be an emotional win, I would imagine. Good team, sets the Bucs up in some type of playoff situation, whether, hey, they tied it up with the Falcons for first in the NFC South, or, oh my God, they're 2 ahead of Atlanta with 2 to go. Yeah. To know that you're playing Carolina next at home in week 17, and you have 2 home games to close out the season, I just think it could be a huge win beating Dallas, and then, you can kind of, hopefully, as we've seen in the past, 2 seasons ago, the Bucs won in week 17, and then they had nothing to play for in week 18. Last year, they did
Right.
have a lot to play for in week 18. But having Carolina as that team to just kind of put the dagger against someone else, I think that's really important, and maybe something that doesn't get a lot of attention paid to.
Yeah, and there is one storyline, like, facing the Panthers that I kinda thought of, and the fact that they face them, like, for the first time in week 13, and when you look at it, like, Dave Canales, he really got the Bucs offense going later in the season, and the Bucs are gonna be facing the
Yeah.
Panthers later in the season. Will the Panthers offense be good? I mean,
Yeah.
like, without a doubt, they're probably gonna be, uh, on the bottom in the cellar in the NFC South this year, like,
I
first
would
year with
think
the new
so.
regime, but they could also give him a challenge too, and there could be a possibility that Bryce Young, he really takes off in his second season. Like, it might be a difficult game where the Panthers could play spoiler.
That might be a game where you're thinking, bit of a trap game for the Bucs. They just played Dallas. You got New Orleans. You might say, I think the Bucs are going to win, but they may not cover the spread. Or you might think, they're finally going to beat Detroit. I'm going to bet the Bucs money line in week 2 when they go against the Lions or when they play the 49ers, who have been difficult for them. If you're going to bet on the Bucs this season, and lines have already come out for week 1 and some other games this season, you can do like, will the Bucs make the playoffs, certain bets like that. If you want to start betting on the Buccaneers, which you already can, the best place to go and do it is over at mybookie.ag. And of course, football is a little ways away, but you got playoff basketball and playoff hockey going on at the moment. Baseball is a couple months into the season. The PGA Championship, one of the 4 majors of golf, is going on right now. There's always UFC fights. A lot of great things to bet on, all over at mybookie.ag. Use the promo code Pewter, that's PEWTER, and get a first deposit bonus when you sign up with MyBookie. So that's free money in your account just for signing up and using the promo code Pewter. Even if you learn from Plant City Math, you know that is a heck of a deal. So check out mybookie.ag and take a look at their online casino as well. Sometimes it's tough to get out to the casino. They have everything that you want where it's just like you're there, but you're doing it from the comfort of your own couch. You can play blackjack, play craps, roulette, all the fun stuff, all at mybookie.ag. So bet on some sporting events, bet on the roulette table, whatever you want. Just do it over at mybookie.ag and use the promo code Pewter. Got another. Oh, it's the old school logo. That could be the cream. That was the creamsicle game of our logo right there. Got another super chat from Gavin Robinson talking about a little Bucs defensive personnel. Thank you, Gavin, for the $2 super chat. And when you super chat us, we're happy to talk about whatever. So Gavin is asking, what about Joe Tryon-Shoyinka at middle linebacker? Could he start there? Good question, because JTS is very athletic. He's kind of going to be moved around a lot this year. We talked about the Joker role for him. Yeah. I think that's a little bit more geared towards kind of lining him around the defensive line, whether that's interior, whether that's outside, or kind of lining him up at linebacker in certain situations where he's most likely going to be blitzing instead of like dropping back in coverage. Now, JTS can drop back in coverage, but I think if you were going to play him at middle linebacker, you would essentially have to train him from day one of this training camp, not even training camp, OTAs, and say, all right, we're playing you at middle linebacker, where I think the Bucs kind of like the versatility of just putting him around everywhere. And he could line up at linebacker for a couple of plays, but I think doing it consistently for, 55 to 65 snaps a game may not be best for the defense. But what do you think, Adam?
Yeah, like, I think I agree with you, and just that he has the athleticism too, and he has an intriguing blend of size and speed that could really, like, be enticing for Todd Bowles to maybe try him out there for a couple plays. But when you look at that and, like, the uncertainty of the outside linebacker position, the Bucs need Joe Tryon-Shoyinka there as, like, the second or third guy, rather than trying to coach him up in a new position in his potentially his final season in Tampa Bay. Like, it makes more sense to keep him out at outside linebacker. And they already have Sebastian Dennis, KJ Britt, JJ Russell. those are the inside linebackers. It's a nice idea, though, outside the box.
Right. Like KJ Britt, in theory, should be the starting inside linebacker next to Levante David, of course. And Savase Dennis is going into year 2. I think if he's healthy in training camp, that's obviously really big. And he's a pretty good coverage inside linebacker, excuse me. But I do think JTS, listen, he got benched last year, but he actually ended up playing better after he got benched for Yaya Diaby. He's still going to play a role on this defense. And I don't hope it comes to this, but I could see him in a situation as the emergency inside linebacker. Like kind of how
Ryan Neal.
Like when Ryan Neal had to, exactly. When Ryan Neal had to play inside linebacker because everyone else got hurt, I guess he would be the guy. But, he's still really athletic, and there's a way that he can be used effectively for this team. It's going to kind of be on Todd Bowles to figure it out.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. We kind of got to most of the schedule with every single game, every single team, the big games. We ranked the primetime games as well. Let's put it up on the screen one more time. I think now's a good time to kind of make our schedule predictions. Well, I'm going to make mine.
Okay.
So the way I looked at it, and it's one of those, I looked at the schedule yesterday, and you kind of look at it and you're like, all right, win, loss, like that type of thing. So that's how I'm kind of approaching it. I will look back at this in training camp or whenever and kind of make a more educated win-loss prediction just based on like how the players are looking. There's obviously so many different factors, but my initial immediate reaction and thoughts. Commanders, I think that's going to be a win. Lions, I still think that's going to be a loss. I don't think the Bucs are ready just yet to defeat the Detroit Lions. Because you look at last year as well. Yes, they got the win against the Eagles in the playoffs, but the measuring stick, quote unquote, games for the Bucs, outside of the Packers game, I don't really think they had too much of those big time wins. Like, yes, you could say Jacksonville, but Trevor Lawrence was severely. I don't think Trevor Lawrence should have played that game, in my opinion. So I don't really count that one. So I don't think they're ready to beat Detroit. However, I do think they beat up on Denver. So that's 2-1. I'm going to give the Eagles a win when they play the Bucs. I think the Eagles will be revamped. I think, they had a bad taste in their mouth as the way the end of the season ended last year, and I think they got a little bit of revenge on the Bucs. So they're 2-2 heading into that big game against Atlanta. I think they beat the Falcons for everything we talked about before, just taking advantage of an Atlanta team that's still trying to get acclimated with each other with Kirk Cousins and the rest of the offense. I'll have Atlanta as a win. I think the Bucs beat the Saints as well. So that's was that 4-2?
Yep.
I have them losing to Baltimore. He's electric, so that's 4-3. I have them I have them beating Atlanta. So that's 5-3. I think they're going to sweep the Falcons. I truly think they're going to take advantage of early schedule of the Falcons not having everything together. So I think they sweep the Falcons, which is great for the tiebreaker. So they're 5-3. However, the gauntlet of Kansas City and the 49ers, I think it's going to be ugly on Monday Night Football. I think the Chiefs are going to absolutely whoop on the Bucs. Todd Bowles, he's a great defensive coach, but sometimes he just has some brutal performances from his defense. The Texans game, the 49ers a year ago. The last 2 regular season games against the Chiefs have been complete blowouts. So the Chiefs scored 41 points the last time that they played against the Bucs. So I think it's going to be ugly. I think with the 49ers, the Bucs are going to break more ground against the 49ers, but not get over the hump just yet. So they're 5-5 going into the bye, but they benefit really well from this
second half
schedule. Giants win, Panthers win, Raiders win. So that puts them at 8-5. I do think it's going to be a little bit of a lull, though, with the Chargers and the Cowboys. Chargers are going to be better this year. Jim Harbaugh just instantly makes teams better. So I have those two as losses, but the Bucs close out the season with wins versus Carolina and against the Saints as well. So I actually have the Bucs going 6-0 in the NFC South, which is pretty difficult to do for really any division. But yeah, I think it's going to be a clean sweep for the Bucs, and that'll give them a 10-7 record, which if you go 6-0 against your division, you probably should win it. So 10-7 is my immediate initial schedule prediction for the Bucs. How about you, Adam?
Okay. Yeah, so I haven't really done a schedule prediction like yet. So what better time than now? So I think looking at the first 4 weeks of the season, I think they do lose to the Lions, but I do think that they beat the Commanders, get off to a good start at home, beat the Broncos against Bo Nix, and again, have the Eagles number and really beat them. So starting off 3-1, going into prime time against the Falcons, I think they win that game. And the following week against the Saints, beating both of their division opponents on the road is no easy task, but I think they start out 5-1. I think they lose to Baltimore at home on Monday night. I think they beat the Falcons again, so that would be 6-2. They lose the next two to the Chiefs and the 49ers, putting them at 6-4. But man, that second half of the schedule is really favorable.
It's juicy, right? It's juicy.
Yeah, you just look at it and you're like, ooh, start cooking. But I think they beat the Giants in their crappy uniforms, 7-4.
I really hope the Giants aren't wearing it when the Bucs play, because I'm probably going to be
that
at
would
that
be horrible.
Game.
Yeah, but beat the Panthers 8-4. I actually think they lose to the Raiders. I think Antonio Pierce, he really coaches up teams really well.
Yeah.
I think at that point in the season, I think the Raiders will have their number. So 8-5, they lose to the Chargers 8-6. They beat the Cowboys, the Panthers, and the Saints. I think they'll go 11-6. Is my initial reaction to the schedule.
All right, that's pretty good. That's obviously quite beneficial for the Buccaneers if they were to go to 11-6, and it might be a situation where they win the division again, they improve their record. Todd Bowles may end up getting a little bit of a raise, and he already makes a lot of money, but you got to make sure you manage your money correctly, and the best place to go manage your money is with Immunity Financial.
Thank you. Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you? Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track, so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Immunity Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That's right. Immunity Financial has proudly been serving clients across the country since 1980. They can help you with a number of things, including brokerage services, insurance services, annuities, sales, and trading. And they can help you set up a college account as well for your child if they want to do that. So give them a call over at Immunity Financial. Get a free consultation. They have establishments all over, not just in Colorado or in Tampa. They have it, if you're going to one of the road games, say you're going to Kansas City, they have it over in Kansas City. They have it in Carolina and LA and all different places in California and across the country. So make sure, Carolina's like I said. So make sure you check out Immunity Financial and get a free consultation with them. Last thing as we wrap up the show, I was trying to think of kind of like rivalry/revenge games, because Nathan Elliott had a good one about Devin White. But you know what? Yeah. We'll get to that in just a moment, because we got a super chat. And you super chat us, you cut the line. Paul Connor, thanks for the $5 super chat, says,
thank you, Paul.
Who do you all think is a trap everyone is overlooking on our schedule? Raiders worry me. Great question. Mm-hmm. I think New Orleans in week 6 can kind of be a bit of a trap game, because you play Atlanta. That's the big one everyone's going to be talking about. Then you get ready for Baltimore on Monday Night Football. The Saints are a team that, they're kind of like a cockroach. They don't just always go away. So even though it's looked really bad at times, I think the Saints could kind of be that trap game early in the season. Adam, I don't know if anyone sticks out to you.
Yeah, you mentioned the Saints being a cockroach. If that's the case, like Cam Jordan, he's the lead cockroach.
Yes, he is. He is.
But looking at it, like I mentioned, the Raiders, I think that's going to be a really tough game. Paul sees it that way as well. If I had to pick another one, though, I would say the Panthers in Week 13. Like going on the road against the Panthers, Dave Canales, he might have that offense really going. And the Panthers' defense isn't too shabby either. They have Derek Brown, probably the best defensive tackle, either him or Dexter Lawrence in the NFL. So I think that could be a challenge and maybe a game that everyone will overlook, but it'll be really close, like being a divisional game. And the Panthers, they very well could play that underdog in that one.
Divisional games are always tough. Like, let's remember last year, what they beat Carolina to clinch the division 9-0. It was not a pretty game by any means. I'm not sure how the Chargers are going to look this year. I do think they'll be better. Like I said before, Harbaugh makes teams better. But I think the Chargers could kind of fall into that sleeper category as well if they're not dominating at that point. Because you got to think the Bucs hopefully will be riding high unless they fall into the trap game you anointed with the Raiders. But they should be on a 3-game winning streak. Cowboys ahead. Got to go out west. So I think that could be one as well. But great question, and thank you for the super chat. As far as revenge games go, Bucs have one against Detroit in Week 2. Sean Payton, remember, Sean Payton was the Saints coach for a very long time, so there's definitely history there with the Broncos. Eagles obviously will be looking for revenge, and Devin White now with the Eagles, that has some storylines. Let's also
Lions with Carlton Davis.
Yes, Carlton Davis with Detroit. That's something to look at. Atlanta, we obviously talked about a ton. Not too much with Baltimore, Kansas City, and San Fran. We've obviously already addressed how big that is. I think that's about it as far as like different connections, former Bucs on new teams and things like that. So those are some of the ones that really stick out. And of course, players are always coming and going, moving and shaking, going to all these different places where they have a home, they need to sell a home, they need to buy a home, all these different things. If you want to move to the Tampa Bay area and buy a home, or maybe you're moving out and you need to sell it, you want to work with the best real estate and mortgage people around. And of course, that is Eric Gross and the Eric Gross Group. Eric has been on the show before. He's an avid Bucs fan, so you can talk a lot of Bucs with him. It takes a full team effort to win a football game, and it takes a full team effort to win in real estate. The Eric Gross Group has done hundreds of transactions in this crazy real estate market and has experience in all types of situations. With their strong team of vendors and a network of over 85,000 agents, the Eric Gross Group will turn your dream of buying or selling a home into a reality. Their clients aren't just transactions, they're lifelong friendships. So don't let the stress of buying or selling a home keep you out of the game. Let the Eric Gross Group take the pressure off. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Eric Gross Group. Check out their website, housesinfla.com, or give them a call at 513-907-4271. The website is housesinfla.com. Their number is 513-907-4271. No matter where you are in your home ownership journey, you'll feel welcome with the Eric Gross Group, the official realtor of pewterreport.com. All right, just some scheduling notes for everybody. We have an action-packed week coming up next week. There's going to be OTAs on Tuesday, so we'll have a OTA recap episode. And then the big news, next Thursday, so a week from now, next Thursday, Bucs general manager Jason Light will be joining the show. We've had Jason on before, not long after the Bucs won the Super Bowl and they had the parade. Very excited to get Jason back on the show. Going to be a lot of fun. And then in a couple of weeks, I believe on June 6th, we're going to have Bucs cap guru, the assistant general manager, Mike Greenberg, great man from Long Island, will be on that show as well. So Jason Light next Thursday, Mike Greenberg on June 6th. So a lot of great shows coming up. Very excited about it. In the meantime, make sure you follow us on all of our social media, on X, Facebook, and Instagram, over at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. We got the podcast 4 times a week. We got, Scott's Pewter Pulses. I put out some reaction videos when the Bucs make moves. We put up videos all the time from practice and press conferences and all that great stuff. So if you're not already doing so, please like and subscribe. And thank you so much to everybody that has subscribed to us really at any point, but especially lately. We got over 14,000, the Chris Godwin number. So we cannot appreciate you guys enough. Thank you for getting us to 14,000. Now we're
moving to Jalen McMillan, though.
Yes, to Jalen McMillan now, which should be a lot of fun. So an awesome week coming up. One last scheduling note. I am going to be out of town all next week. I'm going on a vacation to Italy, so I will not be on the show at all next week. But Scott will be on. We'll have Bailey. Adam, you'll be on as well. Bailey, Adam as well. Bailey,
yeah.
Adam. But we'll have plenty of Pewter reporters on. Great guests. I mean, we're having Jason Light on the show. So I'll miss you guys for a little bit, but don't worry. The Pewter Report podcast is in great hands, and the content is always going to be churning out. So until next week, for Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you on Monday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Have a great weekend, everybody. Out.